You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 12th part of What If Naruto Enters K-Pop Demon Hunters. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. By mid-morning, the girls were gathering their things, hair pulled back and notebooks tucked under their arms. Mira slung her bag over her shoulder, her expression sharp with focus. We've got studio time booked. The diss track isn't going to perfect itself. Zoe twirled a pen like it was a dagger. Oh, it's already perfect. I just need more demon insults to rhyme with. Rumi tugged on her hoodie, glancing once at Naruto curled on the couch with his crutches leaning nearby. We'll be gone most of the day. You sure you're okay here? Naruto stretched, wincing a little as his leg pulled tight. Nope. I'm coming with you. He jabbed his thumb at Sasuke, who was lacing his boots at the door. Piggyback ride. Sasuke froze mid-motion and shot him a flat look. Not happening. Naruto's grin widened. Come on. We'll go faster. You're strong, stoic, brooding perfect piggyback material. Zoe nearly doubled over laughing. Oh my gods, please do it, Sasuke. Just imagine the fan cams. Mira pinched the bridge of her nose. Fan cams? You two would look like a circus act. Naruto sat up straighter, clutching his chest like he was wounded. Circus? This is practicality. Efficiency. He jabbed a finger at Sasuke again. This man refuses to acknowledge the beauty of teamwork. Sasuke stood, brushing past him with a faint smirk tugging at his lips. If you can keep up on crutches, you're welcome to join. Traitor, Naruto muttered, dragging himself up with exaggerated effort. Rumi caught his arm, steadying him, and he leaned into her with a smug grin that screamed I win anyway. The girls rolled their eyes in unison, but even Mira couldn't fully hide her smile. The whole squad stepped out together, the morning sun catching their shadows Hunter/X with their two-leaf wolves trailing behind, bantering all the way to the studio. The studio thumped with bass, mirrors throwing back every move Hunter/X made. Mira was front and center, barking corrections like a drill sergeant in sneakers. Sweat streaked her temples, but her eyes never wavered. On beat 4 snap, don't slide. Rumi, sharper. Zoe, stop laughing. This is a battle, not karaoke. Zoe puffed her cheeks, but her next steps tightened. Rumi rolled her eyes and repeated until she landed the move perfectly. Mira clapped once, brisk approval, then reset the track. On the bench, Naruto slouched against the wall while Sasuke sipped black coffee like it was the only thing keeping him alive. She's scary when she gets like this, Naruto muttered. Sasuke didn't look up. She's always like this. Before Naruto could reply, Bobby burst in from the control booth, hands full of energy drinks. That's my girls. See that snap? Flawless. He pointed a finger at Mira. Queen of choreography, right here. Mira didn't even glance at him. You want to keep talking, or you want me to make you run the set with us? Bobby zipped his mouth shut and slipped an energy drink into Zoe's hand like a peace offering. Zoe snickered. Don't worry, Naruto. Mira only bites if you mess up the counts. Naruto raised both palms. Nope. Not me. I'm just here to watch my girlfriend crush it. You couldn't pay me to get on that floor. Bobby clapped him on the shoulder, grinning. Smart man. Also don't even think about it, Storm Boy. If Rumi's the star, you're the #1 fan. Sit there, look pretty, and clap at the right times. Naruto groaned, sinking lower. I feel like I'm back in class. Sasuke smirked faintly behind his mug. Difference is, this time you've actually got someone grading you. The track blasted again. Mira snapped them back into place. Reset from the top. And Naruto? She caught his eye in the mirror. Watch closely. Learn something. Naruto muttered under his breath, feels like a setup, but he leaned forward anyway. Rumi shot him a quick smile before spinning back into formation, and somehow, that made all the squeaky leather memories worth it. The studio break stretched long, the bass cut off and leaving only the echo of Myra's sharp clap still buzzing in the mirrors. Zoe flopped onto the floor, hair sticking to her forehead, while Rumi sipped water in the corner. On the bench, Naruto had tipped sideways mid-yawn and ended up leaning against Sasuke. TCH, Sasuke muttered, shifting like he might shrug him off. Idiot. But Naruto was already out cold, breathing steady. Sasuke sat stiff for a minute, pretending it was an inconvenience. He lifted his cup of coffee, took one slow sip, and told himself he'd move Naruto once he finished it. Except, by the time the mug was empty, his own head had tilted. When Zoe looked up again, both boys were asleep, heads propped against each other, their masks of toughness gone. Just two exhausted hunters knocked out in a studio full of squeaky leather and neon lights. Mira smirked, pulling out her phone. Should I? Rumi raised an eyebrow, but her lips curved. Send it to me first. Unknown to them, someone else had eyes on the studio. Perched high above the neon-drenched skyline, Jinnu leaned casually against the frame of a rooftop billboard. From this height he could see the tower, the studio lights glowing through the wide windows. His smile was all polish, but his eyes burned with calculation. They didn't notice the first one, he murmured, twirling the silver chain in his hand. Or maybe she did and ignored it. The thought made his jaw tighten. Rumi part demon, part hunter walking so openly with her patterns in the light, unashamed. He had thought the marks were shame he could exploit, leverage to break her down and bring her to GWI in chains. But instead she flaunted them. Lived with them. Loved with them. He ground his teeth. So be it. Jinnu slipped a folded scrap of parchment from his pocket. This one was sharper, clearer in intent, the ink scrawl glittering faintly as if alive. He pressed it to his lips in a mock kiss before sending his tiger familiar slinking into the night. The beast stripes rippled with pink light, a blur across the rooftops. She'll see this one, Jinnu whispered, his tone half a promise, half a threat. One way or another. The Saja boys' leader melted back into the city's glow, plotting his next move while, below, Naruto and Sasuke dozed on, blissfully unaware that another shadow had just tightened its hold on them. The elevator chimed as they returned from the studio, their steps heavy from hours of rehearsal. Rumi trailed behind the others, her braids swaying, when something caught her eye on the penthouse doorframe, a folded slip of parchment pinned neatly where only she would notice. She pulled it free, her brow furrowing as she read the elegant scrawl, "Meet me near the stadium building tonight." 9. A shadow fell across her shoulder. Naruto leaned in, his voice casual. Another one, huh? Rumi yelped, clutching the note against her chest. Don't sneak up on me like that. Sorry, he said with that easy grin of his, eyes flicking toward the parchment. So? You gonna toss it like the last one? That's exactly what I'm going to do. She crumpled it in her fist, ready to pitch it into the nearest trash can. But Naruto's hand caught hers gently, his touch steady despite the lingering tremor in his muscles. No harm in seeing what he wants. Her head snapped toward him, eyes wide. You want me to meet a demon boy? Are you insane? He only shrugged, utterly unbothered. Maybe he just wants to gloat. Or maybe he'll slip up and brag about a plan. Either way, it could be useful intel. His tone softened as his grin returned. If you want, I'll go too. Just in case it's an ambush. Rumi's shock shifted to exasperation. She gestured at his crutches leaning against the wall. Naruto, you can barely walk. Another shrug. I could float, he offered with a perfectly straight face. Then his smirk broke through. Or you could give me a piggyback ride. She stared at him, caught between disbelief and laughter. You're impossible. And yet, Naruto said, leaning back against the couch like he hadn't just volunteered for insanity, you haven't said no. Late that night, the city lights painted Seoul in silver and neon. The others were asleep, the tower quiet. Rumi tightened the straps of her black leather suit, the same one she'd sworn to throw away. Naruto had convinced her otherwise half teasing, half serious until she gave in with a sigh. Her braid swung against her back, patterns glowing faintly under the moonlight. Naruto, for his part, looked less like a stormbringer and more like a guy in HUNTR/X pajamas with sword strapped across his back. The contrast was ridiculous, and somehow that made it even more dangerous because who else but him could look like that and still stride into the night without shame? You're lucky you're cute, Rumi muttered, hitching him onto her back as he clung lazily around her shoulders. I know, Naruto said, chin resting on her shoulder like this was the most natural thing in the world. Best chauffeur I've ever had. Shut up before I drop you. She carried him most of the way through the quiet backstreets, her boots crunching softly on the pavement. But halfway there, Naruto tapped her shoulder. All right, my turn. She looked back, confused until he stepped off her and summoned the wind. A small, crackling cloud formed beneath him, golden resonance sparking at its edges. Naruto settled cross-legged on it, swords balanced across his lap, pajama hem fluttering in the current. She started, then gave up with a shake of her head. Unbelievable. He grinned at her from his perch, the city lights dancing in his eyes. Come on. Let's go see what your demon boy wants. And side by side, her leather creaking, his cloud humming, they slipped into the night, unseen, their secret rendezvous only for them. The rooftop was slick with dew, the city's hum rising faint beneath it. Neon washed the concrete in shifting pinks and blues, the kind of light that made every shadow look alive. Rumi stood alone, her braid brushing over her shoulder, leather suit tight against her frame. The soul sword pulsed in her hands, its light a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat ready to strike. Across from her, Jinnu emerged from the darkness as though he had been born from it. No stage lights, no smirk meant for cameras, just hollow eyes and a tired posture that betrayed a weight heavier than fame. The instant he appeared, Rumi lunged, blade slashing with enough force to shatter stone. Jinnu twisted back, hands raised, his voice ragged. I just want to talk. Rumi's sword stayed between them, her tone sharp enough to cut without steel. What do you have to say that I need to hear? He let out a long, weary sigh, like the words hurt him to speak. It was a shock to see patterns on a hunter. But the real twist? His gaze flicked over her arm, where the marks glowed faintly under the moon. Seeing her walk free. Shameless about it. Rumi's eyes narrowed, every muscle coiled tight. So what's the point? The point, Jinnu said softly, almost bitterly, is that it must be nice. To walk free while we suffer under GWMA's wrath. You hear his voice too, don't you? Whispering in your ear. You know what it's like. Her brows furrowed. Genuine confusion flickered across her face. Whispering in my ear. What are you talking about? This time, it was Jinnu's turn to look shocked. His mask of composure cracked, the boyish smirk gone. You don't hear him? His voice dropped into disbelief. But you bear the marks. You carry them like his demons do. And yet you aren't like us. The silence stretched, heavy with something unspoken. And then, from above, a voice cut through, lazy, confident, utterly unbothered. She's a half-demon, Jinnu. That's your name, right? Rumi's shoulders eased just a fraction as Naruto floated down on his little crackling cloud. Pajama pants, swords across his back, arms crossed like this was nothing more than a casual drop-in. He landed beside her, golden sparks rolling off his body, his grin infuriatingly relaxed. Because to him, with his storm crackling in his veins and his fierce, appealing girlfriend at his side, there really wasn't anything in the world that could touch him. Jinnu took an involuntary step back. He hated himself for it, but it happened anyway. Something about this blonde boy this hunter radiated power. It wasn't the sword strapped casually across his back, or the faint sparks dancing along his skin like the storm itself bent around him. It was the way he stood there, barefoot in pajama pants, floating down on a cloud as if the entire rooftop and city belonged to him. Like the sky had always been his. Jinnu's throat worked. The smirk he usually wore faltered, replaced with a flicker of unease. He could feel it, thrumming in the air, louder than the neon buzz around them. Naruto's presence wasn't performance. It wasn't a mask. It was raw, unfiltered strength, the kind that didn't need to announce itself because it already owned the space. Who are you supposed to be? Jinnu muttered, trying to recover his swagger, even as his fingers twitched nervously at his sides. Naruto only tilted his head, grin lazy, storm cloud crackling beneath his heels. Just her boyfriend, he said simply, reaching to rest a hand on Rumi's shoulder like that explained everything. And in a way, it did. Rumi's sword lowered a fraction, though her glare never softened. Jinnu's chest tightened at the sight of her standing there with him, half demon and Stormbringer, united, unashamed. The kind of bond VERYYYY could never forge through fear. For the first time since he'd arrived, Jinnu felt cornered. Not because they outnumbered him, but because something in him whispered that the world itself bent toward these two. Jinnu blinked between them, disbelief flashing across his face. I didn't know she had a boyfriend. Naruto let out the most exaggerated sigh, shaking his head as if the weight of the world had just been placed on his shoulders. Yeah, I know. It's like she's ashamed of me. Rumi's eyes widened. Naruto. Her hand snapped up and smacked him across the back of the head. He went spinning theatrically, flailing like he'd just been betrayed by the person he loved most. Injured. Wounded. Broken in spirit, he cried, clutching his heart as he floated backward on his cloud like a wounded prince retreating from battle. Jinnu just stared, completely thrown. This was supposed to be tense, dangerous patterns, VERYYYY, the weight of curses, and now this pajama-wearing hunter was drifting away dramatically, his voice echoing against the Tokyo skyline like a stage actor overplaying his part. Rumi dragged a hand down her face, muttering, "Why do I even love you?" "Because I'm irresistible," Naruto called back, already plopping onto his cloud with a steaming cup of ramen he'd somehow conjured. He slurped loudly, cheeks puffing, his goofy grin splitting the serious mood in half. The rooftop tension cracked like glass under a hammer. Whatever Jinnu had planned for this meeting, it was gone now, replaced with the surreal image of the Stormbringer in pajama pants, eating noodles mid-air while his demon-marked girlfriend tried not to strangle him. Even Jinnu couldn't hide the twitch of his lip, caught between outrage and reluctant amusement. Jinnu let out a long, defeated sigh. The fight in him bled away as his gaze lingered on the pair, Rumi steady, sword in hand, and Naruto drifting lazily on his conjured cloud as if danger was just another passing breeze. There was no path forward here, not tonight. And for the first time in years, Jinnu wasn't even sure he wanted to act. He turned, his expression unreadable in the neon glow of the city. "We'll meet again," he said, his voice low, almost resigned. Then, with a ripple of smoke and fading pink sparks, he was gone. The rooftop went still. Naruto gave a little chuckle, then promptly crashed to the ground as his resonance flickered out. His crutches clattered against the concrete. "Idiot!" Rumi gasped, kneeling beside him. "You burned through everything. What if he had attacked?" Naruto winced but grinned all the same, his breath short and uneven. "Well, guess I need a lift, my steed." She gawked at him, torn between exasperation and affection. "You're unbelievable." He leaned against her shoulder, still smiling even as fatigue weighed down his body. "Come on, just one, giddy up. For me." Rumi couldn't help it, she laughed, hoisting him onto her back with a strength that made the act look effortless. Naruto immediately let out a playful cowboy whoop, mimicking galloping noises with every step. "Stop it," she hissed, her cheeks burning, though her lips twitched with a smile. "Yeehaw," he croaked, bouncing weakly as she carried him through the quiet Tokyo streets. And despite herself, Rumi laughed all the way back to the penthouse. The tower lobby buzzed with energy. Fans were already lined up outside the glass doors, their voices carrying into the building in an excited chorus. Posters of FUNTR/X lined the walls, stacks of albums waiting to be signed. Staff moved quickly, arranging tables and chairs for the event. Sasuke worked quietly alongside them, his movements precise as he adjusted the placement of the tables, making sure everything was neat and orderly. He wasn't used to this kind of chaos, but the discipline of setting things right suited him. Across the room, Naruto lounged with Bobby, who was fussing over every last detail like a nervous mother hen. Naruto grinned at him, sipping on a can of soda Bobby had practically shoved into his hand. "Don't strain yourself," Bobby scolded, giving him a once-over. "Doctor said crutches for another 3 days, minimum." Naruto just raised a brow, tipping his head back smugly. "Relax. In 3 days, I'll be back on missions. Good as new." He flexed one arm, the muscle taut under his sleeve. Rumi, standing nearby as the girls finished touching up their makeup, froze at his words. She turned to him, her braids sliding over her shoulder. "Are you going to be okay?" Her voice was steady, but the worry underneath was clear. Naruto's grin softened. He nodded, flashing that boyish smile that always seemed to reassure everyone else. "Of course. Nothing I can't handle." But Rumi's own smile dimmed, her chest tightening. She knew better. Naruto wasn't like the other boys she met, wrapped up in rehearsals and photo shoots. He had a life that took him far away from her, into battles she could only imagine. For a heartbeat, she wished she could just keep him here safe, close, where the world couldn't reach him. She wished being with her was enough. Naruto didn't notice the flicker of sadness in her eyes. He was already laughing at something Bobby said, his voice carrying like sunlight through the busy room. Rumi looked down at her hands, squeezing the marker she'd be using to sign albums. Her smile came back, but softer this time, fragile in a way only she would know. The doors opened and the fans poured in, filing into 4 long lines, the chatter swelling into an excited roar that filled the hall. Flashing phones, squeals, the scent of paper and perfume, it was the energy of adoration, bottled in one place. The girls of FUNTR/X took their seats behind the table, markers poised, practiced smiles bright. At the very front, 5 bulky lumps shuffled forward, each sipped inside a sleeping bag. The crowd laughed, confused murmurs spreading as the lumps plopped onto the floor. Then, in perfect comedic timing, the bags split open. The Saja boys rose to their feet, pastel hair gleaming, grinned smug as the fans screamed. Bobby froze mid-step, his clipboard nearly falling from his hands. "What the? I'll get you a table." Before he could bolt, Rumi raised her hand, calm and collected. "No. Let them sit with us." The crowd shrieked louder at the suggestion, phones snapping like fireworks. Myra's jaw tightened, her smile paper-thin. She slid slightly aside as Romance and Abby plopped down on either side of her, both leaning in with shameless charm. Abby tilted his head, his lilac fringe falling into his eyes as he drawled, "Mira, right? You look even prettier up close." Romance winked, resting his elbow on the table far too close to her arm. "Do you always smell this good, or is today special?" Myra's scowl could have cut steel. She turned to sign the next fan's album with mechanical precision, refusing to even look at them. Her hand shook just slightly from the effort of keeping professional. At the back of the hall, Sasuke leaned against the wall, arms folded. The sight of Mira, normally so icy, being cornered by two preening demons made him smirk. He didn't move to help. Instead, a quiet, rare laugh slipped out, the sound carried away by the fans' cheers. Meanwhile, Mystery and baby Saja settled beside Zoe. Mystery lowered his chin just enough for his violet hair to shadow his eyes, playing the mysterious type perfectly. Zoe's shoulders stiffened as she signed a poster, trying desperately to keep her cool. But the corners of her mouth twitched, her eyes sparkling like they wanted to betray her. "Don't fawn. Don't fawn. Don't fawn," she repeated in her head. Baby Saja giggled in his childlike voice, handing Zoe a pen she didn't need. "You dropped this, Nuna." Zoe's corn eyes nearly popped into popcorn right there, but she held it together with a shaky, "thanks," gripping the pen like a lifeline. Then Jinnu strolled up, slow and confident, the stage lights catching his smile. He slid into the seat right next to Rumi, his posture dripping smug satisfaction. "We meet again," he said smoothly, his voice carrying just enough for nearby fans to swoon. Rumi didn't flinch. She didn't even turn to look at him. Her eyes stayed on the fan in front of her, marker scratching across the album cover. With a single, dismissive roll of her eyes, she answered in a tone flat as ice. "Unfortunately." The crowd laughed, thinking it part of the show. But Sasuke, watching from the back, saw Jinnu's smirk twitch just slightly, like he wasn't used to rejection so cleanly delivered. The air at the table felt charged, almost brittle. Jinnu's smirk lingered on Rumi, her rolled eyes the only answer she was willing to give. Mira grit her teeth as Romance leaned closer, Zoe's shoulders trembled from the strain of sitting so near to Mystery, and Sasuke's quiet laugh from the back echoed faintly in the background. Then, crash. The sharp sound split the hall. Every head turned toward the source. Naruto lay sprawled near the entrance, his crutches clattering across the floor in opposite directions. His hood had slipped back, blonde hair wild and unruly, his expression caught between sheepish and frustrated as he tried to push himself up. For one suspended heartbeat, the room froze. Then it erupted. "Is that? It's Naruto. Rumi's boyfriend. Huntrex's hero." Half the fans surged forward, squealing, their phones raised high. But it wasn't just about pictures. Adoration lit their faces as they rushed toward him, hands outstretched to help. A dozen pairs of arms lifted him carefully back to his feet, returning his crutches, dusting his shoulders like he was the most fragile treasure. Naruto blinked, stunned at the wave of kindness, then scratched the back of his head with an embarrassed grin. Thanks." The crowd melted at the sight. On stage, Rumi's entire body went rigid. She recognized that look in the fans' eyes, pure adoration, not the screaming, distant kind that idols usually got, but something softer. Genuine. It was the same look she sometimes caught on her own face when Naruto wasn't paying attention. Jinnu's smirk faltered, if only for a moment. His sharp eyes caught the way Naruto held himself, even bruised, even limping, even caught in something as silly as a fall. The man radiated an aura that pulled people in. Power without even trying. Naruto, meanwhile, just gave a little wave to the fans as they slowly returned to their lines. He clutched his crutches tighter, hobbling forward toward the table with his easy, boyish smile, like nothing at all had just happened. The Saja boys were all watching now, silent for once. The Saja boys narrowed their eyes. From their seats at the signing table, they watched Sasuke rise smoothly, his chair scraping faintly against the floor. Without a word, he crossed the room, his presence alone making the fans quiet down. He reached Naruto, steadied him by the arm, and guided him back toward the chairs behind the table. The closer they got, the heavier the air felt. The Saja boys could feel it, something primal, something that didn't belong in brightly lit fan halls or playful stages. An aura rolled off Naruto and Sasuke, quiet but suffocating. Predators. Not performers. Not celebrities. Hunters. Romance swallowed hard, his easy smile faltering. Abby shifted uncomfortably, glancing to Jinnu for direction, but Jinnu's gaze was locked on Naruto, watching, calculating, wary. It was terrifying. Even injured, even with Naruto leaning on crutches and Sasuke's shirt still rumpled from days without proper rest, their energy was overwhelming. It wasn't just strength. It was danger. These weren't people who pretended to fight, they were killers, honed and real, wrapped in calm smiles and quiet gestures. And for the first time since debuting, the Saja boys felt what it meant to be prey. The crash of Naruto's crutches had split the noise of the signing. Dozens of fans leapt from their spots, rushing toward him with wide eyes and worried voices. Sasuke was already there, steadying him with a hand on his elbow, guiding him like it was second nature. "Idiot," Sasuke muttered under his breath, though his grip was careful, almost protective. Naruto gave a sheepish grin, bowing his head at the fans as they fussed. "I'm okay, really. Just clumsy." Then Rumi was there. Her chair scraped as she darted out from behind the table, pushing through the crowd without hesitation. She knelt at his side, her braids swinging forward, hands flying over his arms, his shoulders, his chest, her expression dark with worry. "You can't even sit still without hurting yourself," she scolded, voice sharp but trembling at the edges. She adjusted his crutches, brushed at his sleeve, cupped his jaw for just a second as if to reassure herself he was solid, real, still with her. Naruto laughed softly, a low rumble that made some of the nearby fans swoon. "See? Nothing to worry about. I've got my best nurse here." The fans squealed. Phones clicked. To them, it was adorable. To the Saja boys, it was something else entirely. Mystery's smile faltered. Abby's fingers drummed against the table, restless, sharp. Baby Saja bit his lip and looked away. Romance forced a grin for the cameras, but his eyes flicked back to the couple, shadowed with unease. And Jinnu couldn't look away at all. Rumi's hand lingered at Naruto's sleeve like it belonged there, her body angled toward him in a way that made it clear she was ready to fight anyone who so much as brushed him wrong. The way Naruto leaned into her touch, unbothered, smiling like nothing else in the room mattered, it was a knife. Jinnu had been so sure. So certain her patterns, her demon heritage, marked her as someone who could be pulled into his orbit. Someone who might understand him in ways no human ever could. He'd thought that edge gave him an opening. But this boy, the grinning, battered hunter who floated into rooms like he owned the sky, had her already. Completely. Jealousy flared hot, bitter. He masked it with a smirk, bowing his head slightly as if impressed by the show of affection, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. Behind the table, Sasuke shot a glare sharp enough to cut glass at the Saja boys, daring them to so much as twitch in Naruto's direction. The fans went back to chatting, murmuring about how cute it all was, but the air between the idols and the hunters was a thin wire pulled taut. The Saja boys knew what they were looking at wasn't just affection. It was power. Unity. Something they couldn't touch. And for Jinnu, that bitter twist inside his chest only grew. Rumi slipped back to her seat with a quick, polished smile. "Sorry, love's tiny delay," she said, voice bright. The fans cooed, phones lifted again. The room hummed with that warm, oblivious adoration that made the whole business feel equal parts ridiculous and intoxicating. In the shadowed space behind the table, Naruto had already found ramen slurping audibly, blissful and unapologetic, while Sasuke leaned against a crate, nibbling on a Pocky stick and watching the room with that slow, unreadable amusement. Naruto's shoulders sagged in contentment as he blew a little steam off his chopsticks. "Perfect timing for lunch," he said between slurps. Jinnu leaned forward, all practiced charm folding into a tilt of his head. "Must be nice, having someone," he said, the compliment thin as a razor. It wasn't meant to be rude, but the edge was there, expectant, possessive. Rumi's smile vanished like someone had turned off the lights. She lowered her voice until it was silk over steel. "If you touch him," she said, cold and steady, "I'll make sure you regret it." Witnesses or not. Her braid brushed her shoulder as she shifted, leather creaking softly, a sound some fans found adorable. For Jinwoo, it sounded like a warning. For a heartbeat the room held its breath. Jinwoo's practiced grin flickered. He'd expected coy, flirtatious resistance, he hadn't prepared for deadly calm. Sasuke's hand tightened on the pocky stick until the biscuit snapped, and his eyes were knives. Naruto, still chewing, glanced up and gave a lazy shrug that didn't reach his eyes. "Play nice," he said. The casualness felt like armor, one that said he trusted Rumi enough to let others test her nerve and would step in if they crossed the line. Jinwoo straightened, swallowed the bite of discomfort, and slid back into performance mode. Of course, he lied smoothly. He gave a small, mocking bow to Rumi and the fans, a gesture that looked like charm on the outside but stung of surrender on the inside. The Saja boys' forced smiles retreated into the act, and the air in front of the table slowly unclenched. Rumi let out a quiet breath and turned back to the fans, warmth returning to her voice. Naruto wiped his mouth with his sleeve, offered her a spare chopstick, and the two of them shared the kind of small, ordinary moment that made the entire show jealous idols, screaming fans, and all feel suddenly very small. Jinwoo's pen scratched across the glossy photo, his posture all smiles for the fan, but his voice cut sideways, quiet enough only Rumi could hear. "Which parent was a demon?" he murmured. "Or do you not know?" Rumi's hand froze on her own pen. The little girl in front of her beamed, eyes shining as she clutched her autograph. Rumi forced her smile back into place, thanking the child and sending her off with a gentle wave. Only then did her gaze snap toward Jinwoo. Her eyes narrowed, purple patterns faintly pulsing under her sleeve. "Don't," she said under her breath, her voice low and sharp as drawn steel. Jinwoo only smirked, sliding the signed photo back to another eager fan. "Curiosity's natural," he whispered. "The fans deserve to know who they're cheering for." Before Rumi could answer, a loud slurp came from behind the table. Naruto, still propped with crutches at Sasuke's side, pulling noodles from his bowl with absolute calm. He didn't even look up when he said, casual as a breeze, "Her parents were hunters. That's all that matters." The air shifted. Sasuke's eyes flicked, Sharingan glow sparking just long enough to make Jinwoo stiffen. Rumi leaned closer, her braid sliding over her shoulder, and hissed, "If you want to keep that pretty face of yours for the stage, stop talking." Jinwoo smiled, but it was thin now, strained at the edges. He turned back to the fans, hiding the unease behind a perfect idle grin. But in the pit of his stomach, something coiled tight. He wasn't sure what unsettled him more, Rumi's threat, Naruto's calm dismissal, or the way the two of them backed each other without hesitation. Zoe slid a stack of glossy photos across the table, her marker squeaking as she scrawled her name with a flourish. Mystery Saja leaned forward, chin resting on his palm, his lilac hair falling just enough to hide his eyes. "You always stare at me like that," he murmured, voice soft, silky. Zoe froze mid-signature, her pen squealing to a halt. Her cheeks lit up like warning lights. "I am not staring. I'm observing. For tactical reasons." Mystery smirked, tapping the edge of the photo she had nearly scribbled through. "Of course. Tactical." Myra's eyes rolled so hard she thought they'd stick. Beside her, Romance Saja leaned in closer than necessary, his pink hair gleaming under the overhead lights. "You look stressed, Mira. You should smile more. Fans like it when you smile." Her pen pressed hard enough to almost tear the paper. "I do smile. Just not at creeps." Romance chuckled, unfazed. "But the camera would love it." He brushed his fingers across the table as if to hand her another photo, but Mira slid it from his grasp with a snap, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Careful," she said. "Wouldn't want to cut yourself." Zoe groaned beside her, muttering, "Mira, can we trade? I'll take Mr. Mysterious Eyes if you take Mr. Pink Hair Drama King." "No," Mira hissed back, "because you'll actually like it." Zoe opened her mouth to protest, but then baby Saja popped up on her other side, leaning his chin on his hands like a child asking for candy. "Nuna," he chirped, "sign one for me too." Zoe's heart-shaped pupils popped back to life. "Oh my gods, he called me Nuna." Mira elbowed her in the ribs. "Zoe. Focus." Romance Saja tilted his head, voice dripping smooth. "It's hard to focus when you're surrounded by men who admire you." Myra's pen finally snapped in her grip. She shoved the broken half aside, grabbed another, and muttered under her breath, "I swear to gods, if they weren't demons, I'd be arrested for assault right now." Zoe nodded frantically, clutching Mystery's signed photo to her chest like a guilty secret. Same. Totally same. Neither of them noticed the way the Saja boys' smirks sharpened as their demon marks faintly pulsed under the table. Myra's marker scratched harder than necessary, her jaw tight. Romance Saja was leaning just a little too close, his perfume heavy with some cloying sweetness that made her stomach churn. She forced herself to sign another album cover without snapping the pen again. A shadow fell over her table. A hand cool, steady set down a bottle of water beside her. Mira blinked and looked up. Sasuke stood there, dark eyes unreadable, his voice low enough only she could hear. "Are you okay?" For a moment, the sharp edge in her posture softened. She wrapped her fingers around the bottle, the condensation cold against her palm. "Yeah," she whispered back, a little too quick. "I'm fine." Romance Saja leaned back with a lazy grin, as if sensing something had shifted. "So protective," he drawled. "How sweet." Mira ignored him, twisting the cap and taking a long drink. The water steadied her, but it was Sasuke's presence, the quiet weight of him standing behind her, that kept her from snapping altogether. Sasuke didn't glare, didn't posture. He simply rested one hand on the back of her chair, close but not touching, his calmness a silent warning in itself. The message was clear enough: you've had your fun. Back off. Romance smirked, but he didn't lean as close after that. Mira breathed easier, the pen gliding smoother across the next fan's poster. When she glanced up again, Sasuke had already stepped back into the shadows of the stage, as if nothing had happened. But her lips curved, just slightly. Because she knew he'd been watching. Backstage, the Saja boys' bright smiles dimmed the moment they were out of sight of fans. Their laughter was brittle, plastic, as they tossed aside the piles of gifts and letters handed to them. Posters, flowers, carefully wrapped boxes discarded into a trash bin without hesitation. Abby muttered something under his breath, Mystery smirked, and Jinu's eyes lingered a little too long in the direction they'd left Rumi. None of them noticed the quiet eyes that were watching. Naruto sat on a folding chair a few feet away, half-slouched, popping mints into his mouth. Bobby hovered near him, scrolling through his phone, muttering about schedules and stage timing. To anyone looking, Naruto seemed perfectly oblivious, chatting lazily with Bobby, grinning around another mint, even dropping a couple on the floor and shrugging like it didn't matter. But his eyes flicked once, sharp, toward Sasuke. Sasuke didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Naruto shifted the box of mints in his hand and, with the tiniest motion, signed against the side of his thigh, "Send a scout." Sasuke's Sharingan caught it instantly. He dipped his chin once in acknowledgement, then turned away as if bored of the whole affair. Slipping out a side door, he extended his hand, resonance flaring black and molten. The phoenix shimmered into existence in silence, wings scattering sparks like dying embers. It tilted its head, waiting. "Track them," Sasuke ordered quietly. The bird gave one sharp cry before disappearing into the night sky, its black flames leaving no trail but the faintest distortion in the air. When Sasuke returned, his face was unreadable. He walked back into the dressing room where fans were still trickling through, the noise of chatter and cameras filling the air. He slid back into his post behind Mira, arms folded, as though he had never left. Naruto caught his eye across the room and grinned faintly, crunching another mint. To everyone else, it looked like the Stormbringer was just enjoying his candy. But Sasuke knew better. Naruto hadn't been oblivious at all. The last fan left with a squeal and a poster clutched to her chest, the echo of the crowd finally fading into the night. Rumi slumped in her chair, shoulders heavy, braid slipping over her shoulder. The pen nearly slid from her hand. Naruto hobbled over on his crutches, every step a little uneven, but his grin was steady. He stopped in front of her and leaned down, eyes soft. "You look wiped," he said, his voice warm with amusement. "I am wiped," Rumi muttered, rubbing her temple. "I've been smiling so much I swear my face might fall off." Naruto chuckled, then tilted his head, thoughtful. "Hey, what if we sneak away tonight? Just the two of us. Catch a movie." Rumi blinked, surprised. "A movie? Now?" "Yeah." He shifted his weight on the crutches, still smiling. "Think about it, we get popcorn, sit in the dark, no fans, no demons, no one but us. Just a normal date. I kinda want that with you." Her lips parted slightly, the exhaustion in her eyes softening into something brighter. "You're serious?" "As serious as I've ever been," Naruto said. "Though you might have to carry me to the theater if my leg gives out again." Rumi laughed, shaking her head, but there was a faint blush on her cheeks. "You're unbelievable." "Unbelievably lucky," Naruto corrected, leaning closer until his grin was only hers. "So what do you say? Wanna go to the movies with me, Rumi?" She couldn't help but smile, the weariness melting away. "Yeah. I'd like that." Naruto's grin widened into something boyish and pure, and for a moment the whole world felt like it had narrowed down to just the two of them. No Saja boys, no missions, no weight of titles. Just a boy asking his girl on a date. Naruto leaned against the doorframe, tugging at the hood of his oversized sweatshirt until it nearly shadowed his whole face. A black mask covered his mouth, the kind the Seoul crowds had gotten used to seeing. Rumi stepped out of her room in a simple cap pulled low, her braid tucked into the back of her jacket, oversized shades hiding her eyes. They shared a look, both of them trying to stifle a laugh. "Think anyone will recognize us?" Naruto asked, voice muffled under the mask. "Not unless you trip on those crutches again," Rumi teased, poking his side. "Low blow," Naruto muttered, but his grin shone in his eyes. They slipped out of the penthouse and into the Seoul night, the city buzzing around them. Neon signs glowed overhead, food stalls steaming on the corners. Rumi stuck close to his side, steadying him whenever the crowd jostled. For a moment, it almost felt like they were just another couple sneaking off for a date. The theater loomed ahead, bright and noisy, posters plastered on the windows. Naruto's eyes lit up like he was a kid again. "Popcorn first," he whispered, already steering toward the concession stand. "Greedy," Rumi said, but she followed with a soft smile. Inside the dim, cool theater, they found their seats tucked in the back row. Naruto sighed as he sat down, stretching his leg out carefully. Rumi slid in beside him, the shadows making it easier to just be. The preview started. Naruto leaned over, whispering, "This feels good. Normal. Just you and me." Rumi turned her head, the flickering screen painting her face in color. "It does," she said quietly. "I could get used to this." Naruto's hand found hers in the dark, fingers threading together. The world outside could wait. The movie flickered to life, the opening notes already eerie. A dark forest stretched across the screen, shadows swallowing the path of some poor soul carrying a lantern. Naruto sat forward, eyes glued, one hand digging into the popcorn bucket like it was a lifeline. Rumi smirked, already guessing what kind of movie it was. Then the first jump scare hit, an ear-splitting shriek and something grotesque lunging across the screen. Naruto nearly launched the popcorn skyward, his hand clamping down on Rumi's arm as he jolted in his seat. Rumi's lips twitched. "Seriously?" she whispered. Naruto ducked his head, trying to play it off. TCH, just checking you weren't scared, that's all. Another scare, worse than the first. This time, Naruto actually slid half across the armrest, burying his face in Rumi's shoulder. She stiffened in surprise, then shook with quiet laughter. "You're terrified," she teased, voice low in his ear. "I'm not," he shot back, muffled against her. I thought if I got closer, I could shield you better." "Oh, really?" Rumi arched a brow, though she squeezed his hand under the blanket between them. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm the shield." Naruto peeked up, eyes wide in mock horror. "No way. That thing was hideous. If it showed up in real life, I'd totally cut it down." Rumi smirked. "With your eyes closed?" The next scare made him flinch again, clutching her tighter. Rumi couldn't help it, she giggled softly, her chest shaking against him. Naruto flushed but didn't let go, leaning into her warmth as if it was the only safe place in the world. By the time the credits rolled, the popcorn bucket was half spilled, Naruto's crutches had fallen over twice, and Rumi's shoulder was stiff from how tightly he'd clung to her. As the lights came up, Naruto straightened, coughing into his fist like nothing had happened. "Not bad. Pretty tame, if you ask me." Rumi gave him a long, deadpan stare. "Aha. You were practically in my lap." Naruto grinned sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. "What can I say? I knew you'd keep me safe." On the way out, Rumi couldn't stop smiling, even as she shook her head at him. And Naruto, despite his protests, never once let go of her hand. The night air was crisp as they left the theater, their disguises blending them into the late-night crowd. Street lamps spilled warm yellow light across the sidewalks, neon signs flickered, and the city hummed with its usual midnight life. Naruto leaned heavier on his crutches than he wanted to admit, but the teasing spark in Rumi's eyes was far more dangerous than the ache in his muscles. "You totally screamed," Rumi said, her braid bouncing as she nudged his shoulder. "I didn't scream," Naruto shot back. "That was a battle cry." "Oh, right," she smirked, a battle cry that sounded like a dying pigeon. Naruto's jaw dropped in mock offense. "A dying? You wound me." "Almost as much as that movie did," she teased, biting her lip to hold back laughter. He grumbled, cheeks warm, then stopped suddenly. Before she could tease him again, Naruto leaned down and kissed her firm and quick, just enough to steal her breath and silence her laughter. Rumi blinked, surprised, then melted into it, her hands brushing his chest as she kissed him back. For a moment, the city noise faded, leaving only the warmth of them pressed together. They pulled apart slowly, her face flushed, his grin cocky. "That shut you up," Naruto murmured. Rumi smirked. "Only for a second." She leaned back in, brushing his lips with hers again, softer this time. "And then? I'm not interrupting, am I?" Both of them froze, snapping their heads toward the voice. A pale-faced man with sharp features stood a few feet away, his expression blank, but his eyes carrying a quiet sharpness. His clothes were simple, but the faint swirl of ink at his fingertips marked him instantly to Naruto. Naruto's grin widened. "Sigh." He stepped forward, offering his hand. The man clasped it firmly, expression unchanging. Rumi blinked, confused. "You know him?" "Yeah," Naruto said easily, clapping Sai's shoulder. "This is Sai. He's a root agent under Danzo." Her brows furrowed. "Root?" Naruto nodded, his tone shifting serious. "They're different from hunters like us. Root doesn't run missions or hunt the way we do. They're guardians, bodyguards for entire cities. When demon hordes hit a big population center, they're the first and last line. They hold the walls while we take the fight outside." Rumi's eyes widened slightly. She'd heard of Danzo, whispers of his displn and severity, but Naruto's words painted the man and his agents in a new light. Not shadowy executioners, protectors. Sai tilted his head. You flatter us. His voice was flat, but not unfriendly. But I only do what must be done. Naruto smirked. That's what makes him good at it. Rumi, still a little flustered from the kiss and now curious about the pale root agent, folded her arms. So, you just show up in alleys after horror movies, or is this a special occasion? Sai blinked once. Coincidence. I was on patrol. His lips curved barely, but enough. Though perhaps it was good timing. Naruto chuckled, and just like that, the tension from before was gone. The three of them fell into step along the quiet street, Naruto leaning against his crutches but keeping his grin easy. Rumi slipped her arm through his half for support, half because she wanted to, and he didn't miss the way she tried to hide her blush behind her braid. Sai walked a pace ahead, hands folded behind his back, posture straight as a blade. His voice was calm when he finally spoke again. You should know we've been keeping an eye on the Saja boys. Rumi's head whipped toward him. You know about them? Sai nodded once. They're GWMA's spawn. The patterns on their bodies mark them, and the energy they release corrodes the Han moon. Danzo was clear Root would pick up the excess. Hunters like HUNTR/X already carry the weight of sealing, so Root will cull where we can. Naruto tilted his head, curious. So, Danzo's just backing us up. Lightening the load, Sai said, his expression unchanged. He knows what your group is trying to do. Turning the Han moon golden again is beyond Root's scope. But thinning GWMA's demons? That we can manage. Rumi's eyes softened slightly. She'd grown up only hearing whispers of Danzo, usually dark, sharp-edged ones. But Sai's words painted a different picture. A man who, at least in this, was playing his part to keep the world standing. Naruto grinned, nudging her with his shoulder. See? We're not alone in this. Even Root's got our backs. Sai glanced at the two of them, Naruto leaning against Rumi, Rumi supporting him despite her scowl, and for a moment, something almost like amusement flickered across his pale features. Danzo would be relieved, he said after a pause. That Stormbringer has someone keeping him upright. Naruto blinked, then laughed, the sound bright in the night air. Guess that makes you jealous, huh? I don't feel jealousy, Sai said plainly. Then, after a beat, added, but statistically you are fortunate. Rumi bit back a laugh. Naruto didn't even try, he doubled over, nearly dropping his crutches as he cackled. Oh man, Rumi, did you hear that? Statistically I'm lucky. Sai blinked once. Yes. You are. Rumi rolled her eyes, tugging Naruto along before his laughter woke the whole street. The city lights softened as they neared the penthouse district, neon humming faintly in the distance. Rumi felt Naruto's weight settle more heavily on her arm. He was trying to hide it, but she knew the walk was draining him. Sai, as always, seemed untouched by fatigue, his pace steady, his voice even when he finally broke the quiet. Rumi, he said, turning his gaze on her for the first time that evening. Be cautious of Jinnu. Her brows furrowed. You know him? Sai gave the faintest nod. Root keeps records. His stage presence hides it well, but he has killed hunters before. Some of them were veterans. He is not as harmless as his theatrics suggest. Rumi's grip on Naruto's arm tightened unconsciously. She remembered the note. The rooftop. The way Jinnu's smirk never faltered, even when Naruto floated above them like the storm incarnate. Naruto, ever the one to cut tension, forced a grin. Well, good thing she's got me, huh? Can't exactly take down Stormbringer with a boy band dance move. Sai didn't smile, but there was the smallest flicker in his eyes, acknowledgement, maybe even agreement. Perhaps. But understand, GWI does not send his pawns without intent. Every encounter costs something. And every cost is tallied. Rumi swallowed, the weight of his words heavy in her chest. At the entrance to the penthouse tower, Sai finally stopped. He gave a shallow bow, precise and respectful, before straightening again. Danzo will be briefed. Root will continue surveillance. For now rest. You'll need it. With that, he turned and vanished into the shadows of the street, so quietly that it was as though he'd never been there at all. Naruto let out a low whistle. Creepy guy, huh? Rumi didn't answer right away. She just looked at the door, her hand still curled tightly around his. Yeah, she whispered at last. Creepy but maybe right. When the door shut behind Sai, the silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of city traffic far below. Rumi's hand was still wrapped tightly around Naruto's, her knuckles white, and she realized she hadn't let go even after the root agent disappeared. She thought of Jinu's smirk on the rooftop, of his bitter words about hearing Jiraiya's voice, about being chained by whispers she had never known. There had been something in his eyes that unsettled her, not lust, not even hatred, but a hollow kind of envy. He had looked at her as though she were a miracle and a curse all at once. Naruto, though Naruto was the opposite. He had floated down like the storm itself, playful, reckless, dramatic enough to make her laugh even when the air had been sharp with danger. Where Jinu saw her marks as proof of chains, Naruto saw them as just her. And he loved her all the more for it. The contrast struck deep. Jinu was bound in shackles she could feel but not see, drowning in Jiraiya's grip, while Naruto had once borne his own chains and torn through them with nothing but stubborn will. He had scars on his heart, not his skin, and he carried them like weapons, like proof he would never let someone else be shackled again. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing, her hand finally loosening its grip on his. Naruto tilted his head, watching her with that easy grin. You okay? Rumi looked at him for a long moment, her chest tight with something she couldn't quite put into words. Then she smiled softly, brushing her thumb against his knuckles. Yeah. Better than okay. And as they went inside, she couldn't help but think that maybe Sai was right. Jinu was dangerous. But so long as she had Naruto, she wasn't afraid. Naruto and Sasuke stepped into the penthouse, the city lights still faintly glowing through the tall windows. Sasuke, stretching his arms like he was itching for something to do, glanced at Naruto. Work out with me, Sasuke said flatly, more of a statement than a request. Naruto blinked, his crutches tucked under one arm, and then turned his gaze toward Rumi like a child caught sneaking sweets. He gave her his best pout, lower lip stuck out, blue eyes wide with faux innocence. Rumi giggled instantly, one hand covering her mouth. Only if you take it easy, she said, wagging a finger like she was scolding him. Naruto groaned, slumping dramatically against his crutches. You're cruel, you know that. Cruel. How am I supposed to impress Sasuke if I'm limited? Sasuke smirked faintly, crossing his arms. I don't need you to impress me. I need you to keep up. That only made Naruto's sulking worse. He shuffled forward, dragging his crutch tips across the hardwood with an exaggerated squeak, until he was standing right in front of Rumi. He sighed, as though this were the greatest injustice in history. You hear that? He doesn't even want to be impressed. What's the point of training if I can't show off? Rumi flicked his forehead lightly. The point is not tearing yourself apart again, genius. Naruto whined but couldn't keep the smile from tugging at his lips. He leaned closer to her, voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper only she could hear. You're still the hottest nurse I've ever had. Rumi flushed scarlet, smacked his arm, and shoved him toward Sasuke. Naruto stumbled, cackling under his breath, while Sasuke rolled his eyes and muttered, pathetic. Still, the faint tug at Sasuke's mouth betrayed his amusement. The elevator doors slid open to the Huntrex private gym, polished mirrors lining the walls and weights gleaming in perfect rows. Sasuke walked ahead like he owned the place, already rolling his shoulders and pulling his hair into a messy tie. Naruto limped in behind him, still muttering complaints under his breath, crutches tapping against the rubberized floor. Rumi, Zoe, and Mira trailed after, coffees in hand, clearly ready for a show rather than a workout. Alright, Sasuke said, eyeing the dumbbells. We'll start light. Don't embarrass yourself. Naruto puffed out his chest. Please. I'm about to blow you away. He tossed his crutches aside dramatically, catching himself on the bench with a grin. See? Perfectly fine. Rumi immediately swooped in, snatching one crutch and waving it threateningly. Try that again, and I'll smack you with this. Doctor's orders. Zoe snorted into her drink. Oh my gods, he really is like a stubborn grandpa trying to prove he can still shovel snow. Mira smirked, arms folded. More like a little kid who won't sit down for nap time. Naruto whipped around, pointing at her. Hey! I'll have you know I'm in peak physical condition. Peak physical condition. Zoe echoed, eyes twinkling. You're still limping like an old man. Peak condition for what? Bingo night? The girls burst into laughter, and even Sasuke's smirk sharpened. Naruto, red-faced, snatched up a pair of dumbbells lighter than he'd usually grab, but heavy enough to make his arms burn given his injuries. He grit his teeth and started curling anyway. Look at that, Rumi said sweetly, her tone dripping with faux awe. Our big, strong warrior. Mira leaned on the mirrored wall, smirking. Careful, Rumi. He might pass out trying to impress you. Zoe cupped her hands around her mouth. Don't strain too hard, Naruto. We'd hate for you to lose your modeling career. Sasuke picked up his own weights and started lifting with casual ease, not even breaking a sweat. Pathetic, he muttered again, but this time his voice carried just enough humor to set Naruto off. Alright, that's it, Naruto grunted, curling harder, sweat running down his temple. Nobody, calls Curl, the future world's greatest hunter, Curl, pathetic. Zoe leaned toward Mira, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear, he's definitely going to pull something. Rumi just sighed, already stepping closer in case he toppled. But despite the teasing, her eyes softened as she watched him. Injured, stubborn, and ridiculous yet still giving everything he had. The gym echoed with the sound of straining muscles and the rhythmic clank of weights. Sasuke gripped the pull-up bar, his motion steady and controlled, back straight, jaw set, pulling himself up and down with effortless precision. Naruto swung beside him, determination burning in his eyes. 1, Sasuke counted under his breath, then 2, then 3, his pace unbroken. Naruto matched him, but his form was a little rougher, his legs kicking slightly as he forced himself upward. Don't think you're gonna beat me, Sasuke, he panted, sweat already trickling down his cheek. You're already behind, Sasuke said flatly, knocking out another 5 without even flinching. Naruto growled. Not for long. He hauled himself up faster, trying to close the gap, his arms shaking with effort. Meanwhile, on the mats nearby, Rumi, Mira, and Zoe had set up with lighter dumbbells and resistance bands. Their movements were calmer, deliberate, but their eyes flicked often to the pull-up bars, half to check on the boys, half to laugh at their inevitable stubborn contest. Mira adjusted her ponytail and side-eyed Zoe. So, she said casually, curling a dumbbell, how's Gaara? Zoe nearly dropped her weight, cheeks blooming red. He's fine, she stammered, looking away. Rumi smirked, catching on instantly. Fine, huh? Zoe shook her head quickly, but the blush deepened. Okay, maybe more than fine. He said he might come visit in a week. Her voice dropped, almost conspiratorial. I think he really means it this time. Mira let out a low whistle. Wow. The Kazekage himself, making the trip for you. Zoe waved her hands frantically. Shoo. Don't say it like that. You'll make me sound, I dunno, like a lovesick teenager. Rumi chuckled softly, curling her weights in time with Zoe. That's exactly what you are right now. Behind them, Naruto grunted loudly as he tried to surge ahead, his pull-ups turning into frantic jerks. I am still in this. Sasuke, without even breaking rhythm, smirked. "You're slipping. Again." The girls glanced back at the two and burst into laughter, their voices mixing with the sound of metal and effort. Naruto was in the middle of laughing at something Zoe said, his grin wide, his body shaking with that full belly kind of joy that made the whole gym feel lighter. Then, all at once, the sound cut off. His laughter snapped into a strangled gasp as his body seized and he collapsed, crashing to the mat. For half a heartbeat, the girls stared. Zoe rolled her eyes, half a smirk on her lips. "Very funny. Trying to fake us out again." Her words died in her throat. Black lines that had lain dormant on Naruto's body since the Chunin exams suddenly flared to life, searing crimson as though carved with molten iron. They spread across his arms, his neck, his chest, pulsing like veins of fire. His back arched violently, a raw, guttural sound ripping from his throat as every muscle seized at once. "Zoe, that's not fake," Mira snapped, already rushing to his side. Rumi dropped to her knees, her braid whipping over her shoulder, hands clutching Naruto's face. "Naruto. Stay with me." Her voice cracked as his eyes rolled back, glassy and unfocused. His body convulsed again, the patterns burning hotter, branding the gym floor with the heat radiating off his skin. He kept blacking in and out. 1 second his breath was ragged and shallow, the next he was choking, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Sasuke was at his side in a flash, hands pressing down on Naruto's shoulders to hold him steady through the violent thrashing. His jaw tightened, dark eyes hard and desperate. "Why now?" he hissed through his teeth. "These marks have been dead for 5 years. Why now?" Naruto's eyes flickered open for a moment, glassy and trembling, his lips moving in a broken whisper. "Burns inside out," then he coughed hard, blood flecking his lips as his chest heaved like he was drowning. The golden resonance in his body flared suddenly, so bright it painted the gym walls in violent light. Sparks danced across the floor, and the very air felt charged, suffocating. Rumi held his hand against her chest, whispering furiously, "I've got you. Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare." Zoe's usual cheer was gone, her voice cracking as she backed up Mira. "This isn't a flare-up, this is something worse, something we can't fix with just bandages or resonance." Another convulsion tore through him, and his body arched so high it looked like it would snap. His patterns glowed red-hot, and for one terrifying second, the air around him bent as if warped by heat. Sasuke leaned close, his voice low, steady, but raw with something heavier. "You're not going out like this, Naruto. Not here. Not now." As suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Naruto's body collapsed against the mat, the violent tremors fading all at once like a storm breaking. The fiery glow of the black marks dimmed, retreating back into his skin until only faint, inert lines remained as if nothing had ever happened. The air lost its violent charge, leaving only the echo of everyone's pounding hearts. Naruto gasped, chest rising and falling in jagged rhythm as he dragged air back into his lungs. He blinked blearily, sweat dripping down his temples, his voice hoarse. What the hell happened? Rumi was already moving, dropping to the floor and pulling his head into her lap. Her hands shook, but her touch was gentle as she brushed damp blonde hair back from his forehead. "Shoo, don't talk. Just breathe." Her thumb traced his temple, grounding him with steady, repeated strokes. Mira knelt close, eyes sharp but worried. 1 second you were fine, the next those marks lit up like they were alive. Zoe's humor was gone, her tone brittle. That wasn't just a flare-up. That was something bad. Really bad. Sasuke crouched nearby, his arms resting on his knees, watching Naruto with unreadable eyes. His voice was even, but carried a tension only those who knew him well could hear. "You've been carrying those scars for 5 years. Why now? Why would they wake up again?" Naruto coughed, tried to push himself up, but Rumi immediately pressed her hand to his chest, holding him down. "Don't you dare," she scolded, her voice trembling despite her attempt at control. You scared me half to death. Just stay down. For once, Naruto didn't argue. He let out a tired laugh, breath hitching halfway through, and turned his face against her lap. Figures. My body waits until I'm finally happy to try pulling this CRP. Rumi's grip tightened in his hair, her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. She just kept stroking, steady and tender, as though sheer will could keep the marks from flaring again. 10 minutes later, Naruto stood under the hot spray of the shower, steam filling the small tiled room. The water coursed over him, but it did little to wash away the unease twisting in his chest. His body was sore, weaker than it should have been, the memory of the marks flaring still burned into his mind. Rumi stood just inside the steam, one arm braced around his waist to keep him upright. Normally, he would have cracked a grin, tossed some teasing line to make her blush, called her a perv just for standing in here with him. That was his way, turning everything light so she never worried too much. But tonight, the words never came. His expression was distant, thoughtful, his blue eyes shadowed as he leaned against her shoulder. You're too quiet, Rumi said softly, adjusting her grip so he wouldn't slip. Her braids stuck damp against her back, steam curling strands loose around her face. Normally, you'd be trying to get a rise out of me. Naruto gave a small, hollow laugh, shaking his head. Just thinking. He tilted his head back into the stream of water, letting it run through his hair, down his face. Those marks haven't burned in years, Rumi. Not since the exams. And now, out of nowhere, he cut himself off with a sigh, gripping the edge of the tiled wall. Rumi's hand slid up to his chest, pressing lightly where she could feel his heart beating hard beneath the skin. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out, she whispered. Her voice was steady, but her eyes gave her away. She was worried, afraid even, though she'd never admit it. Naruto looked down at her then, meeting her gaze. For a second, the tension in his shoulders eased. He reached up, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek. Thanks for being here. I don't know what I'd do if. She cut him off with a firm shake of her head. Don't you dare finish that sentence. You're not going anywhere. He chuckled again, softer this time, but it was clear his mind was still troubled. The marks had gone dormant again, but for how long? By the time she realized her clothes were damp from the steam and stray spray, it was pointless. With a little sigh, Rumi stepped out, peeled them away, and slipped back under the shower beside him. Normally, she'd brace herself for it. Naruto's grin, his half-serious wolf whistle, the playful way he'd call her distracting, just to see her blush. She expected it, almost wanted it, because it meant he was still himself. But tonight, there was none of that. Naruto sat on the small bench built into the wall, water coursing over his shoulders, his head bowed so the strands of his blonde hair plastered to his face. He didn't look at her, didn't say anything as she lathered her arms, rinsed, and moved through the motions. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the hiss of the water. It made her heart tighten. Still thinking, she asked gently, glancing at him from the corner of her eye. Naruto leaned back against the tile, blue eyes glazed and distant. Yeah, I can't shake it. Those marks, Rumi, they weren't supposed to come back. Not like that. I thought I'd buried that part of me. His voice was low, almost drowned out by the water. Rumi's hand paused at her collarbone. For once, she didn't have a quip or some teasing remark. She rinsed off, then sat beside him on the bench, letting their shoulders press together under the falling water. Then maybe it wasn't about burying it, she said. Maybe it was about waiting. For the right moment. For something. Naruto turned his head, studying her face. She wasn't mocking him, wasn't sugarcoating it, she meant every word. He let out a shaky laugh, one that was more breath than humor. I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse. Rumi nudged him with her shoulder, the faintest smile tugging her lips. It means you're still here. That's what matters. Whatever this is, we'll deal with it. Together. Naruto stared at her for a moment longer, then finally reached out, threading his fingers through hers. He squeezed, not saying anything else, but she could feel it in the way he held on that even though the marks haunted him, she was his anchor. Steam still curled through the bathroom when they finally turned off the water. Rumi grabbed 2 towels, wordlessly draping one over Naruto's shoulders, the other around herself. She helped him dry off, careful with every movement. His muscles still twitched now and then, spasms left over from the seizure. By the time she eased him back into the bedroom, Naruto was quiet again. He let her guide him to sit on the edge of the bed, his damp hair sticking up in uneven spikes. Rumi knelt in front of him, towel in hand, and began gently drying his hair. It was then, when the silence pressed in too heavy, that he finally spoke. "I'm scared, Rumi." His voice cracked on the first word. "What if those marks, what if I lose it? What if one day out there, in the middle of a mission, I stop being me and His throat worked. He dropped his face into his hands. "What if I hurt you? Or Sasuke? Or Sakura? What if I become the kind of monster we're supposed to be killing?" The words hung between them, raw and trembling. Rumi stilled, her hands lowering until she could cup his cheeks, forcing him to look at her. His eyes were wet, full of terror he didn't want anyone else to see. "You're not a monster," she whispered, her thumb brushing away the dampness at the corner of his eye. "You're Naruto. The same idiot who makes me laugh, who eats ramen like it's the last food on earth, who would rather break himself than let anyone else get hurt. Do you hear me? You will not lose yourself. Not while I'm here." Naruto swallowed hard, his breathing uneven. "But if it happens, then I'll stop you," Rumi said firmly, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "Even if I have to cut through the storm itself. I won't let you fall. Ever." She pulled him into her arms, pressing his head to her shoulder, holding him with all the strength she had. Naruto clung to her like a drowning man, his fingers gripping her waist, his breath shaky but slowly steadying against her skin. For the first time that night, the storm inside him eased. Naruto shifted in the sheets, too tired to joke further. Rumi slid in beside him, and instead of curling into her chest like usual, he rolled gently until his back pressed against her front. Her arms instinctively wrapped around his middle, holding him snug against her. His body was still trembling faintly, worn from the seizures and from worry, but with her warmth at his back and her heartbeat steady against him, his breathing began to calm. "Little spoon tonight, huh?" she whispered with a smile, brushing damp strands of hair from his temple. "Don't tell Sasuke," Naruto muttered, voice muffled by the pillow. Rumi laughed softly, kissing the crown of his head. "It's safe with me." And there, tucked in her arms, Naruto finally let go of the last of his fear, drifting into sleep with a small, peaceful grin. The clang of weights echoed through the private gym, steel against steel, steady breaths between sets. Sasuke was doing pull-ups with sharp, perfect rhythm, sweat slicking his brow. Naruto, still stubborn even with his torn muscles, pushed himself to keep pace. Across the room, Mira spotted Zoe on form while Rumi stretched, the 4 of them trading chatter and laughs while their eyes never strayed far from the boys. Naruto had just dropped from the bar with a grin when it happened. His body locked up. The smile slipped, and suddenly his entire frame jolted like he'd been hit with a live wire. He crashed hard to the mats, seizing, his arms jerking, legs kicking against the floor. "Quit playing, idiot," Mira muttered automatically, rolling her eyes until she saw it. The dormant black markings along his collar and ribs pulsed awake, burning crimson. They crawled across his skin like wildfire, scorching trails that glowed in the low gym light. His back arched violently, a strangled cry ripped from his throat. "Naruto!" Rumi dropped to her knees, her braid falling forward as she tried to hold him still. Zoe's face went pale. Sasuke froze, Sharingan flickering to life, eyes tracking every twitch in horror. Miles away, unseen on a rooftop overlooking the city, Orochimaru shuddered with exertion, hands clasped into a seal. His lips curled into a smile even as sweat streamed down his face. Yes, yes, he hissed, voice breaking. Even after all these years, my mark answers me. It takes so much, he bit back a laugh, golden eyes narrowing. But it works. Kisame leaned on the railing beside him, Samahata humming in hunger. He snorted. So you can make him twitch like a fish on a hook. All that effort, Orochimaru, and for what? Why not just slit his throat? Kill the girl too while you're at it. Orochimaru's grin stretched serpentine. No. The girl stays. She has her value. And the boy, his breath rattled, drunk on the sight he alone could feel. The boy is the key. When the time is right, I'll take everything from him. For now, I test the leash. Back in the gym, Naruto's eyes rolled, glassy, his chest heaving as he slipped in and out of consciousness. For one terrifying moment, it looked like the mark would consume him whole. Then suddenly it stopped. The red glow flickered, sputtered, and sank back into black silence. His body went limp. What the hell happened? He gasped, chest heaving, pupils blown wide. Rumi cradled his head in her lap, stroking his hair, her own breath ragged. Don't move. Just breathe. Sasuke crouched nearby, every muscle taut, eyes still blazing. Why now? He muttered, low enough only he could hear it. And far above, Orochimaru chuckled, pulling his hands free of the seal. His body sagged with the toll it had taken, but his eyes burned with triumph. The Stormbringer has a weakness. And I've found it. The morning sun slanted through the penthouse windows, painting everything in pale gold. Naruto sat quietly on the couch, crutches propped beside him. He didn't fidget or joke the way he usually would. His posture was straight, his eyes steady. The memory of last night's searing pain was still too close. The door opened. Tsunade entered with a brisk stride, her cloak rippling behind her. The guards at the door straightened instantly, but she barely spared them a glance. Her eyes locked on Naruto, and for a moment her face softened before tightening again. You really don't know how to stop, do you? She said, voice sharp but weighted with concern. Naruto bowed his head slightly, his tone quiet. Hokage-sama, I pushed too far. I'll accept any punishment you think I deserve. But please help me stay ready for the field. Her expression flickered, pride hidden under her scowl. She knelt, golden resonance blooming in her palms. The warm glow spread into Naruto's chest, down his arms, and through his legs. Every torn fiber of muscle, every crack of strain, began to knit back together. The ache that had haunted him for days washed away. Rumi sat close, her hand folded over Naruto's. She watched with wide, unblinking eyes as the glow smoothed away the faint burns where his patterns had flared. You don't realize what you're doing to yourself, Tsunade murmured, working with practiced precision. Every time you burn like this, you shave years off your life. You think being strong for everyone means destroying yourself. Naruto's gaze lowered. His voice was steady, respectful. I know. And I'll be more careful. But if it means protecting my team, protecting her, his grip on Rumi's hand tightened. Then I'll endure it. But I promise I won't keep you in the dark. Not again. Tsunade studied him for a long moment, her hands still glowing. Finally, she sighed, the fight draining from her shoulders. You've grown but you're still reckless. If that mark stirs again, you come to me immediately. No exceptions. Yes, Hokage-sama, Naruto said firmly. The glow faded. Naruto flexed his fingers, no tremor, no weakness. For the first time in weeks, his body felt whole. He bowed his head again. Thank you truly. Tsunade stood, masking the faint pride tugging at her lips. You'll live. And you're fit for duty again. But don't make me patch you together every time you come home. Naruto nodded once, solemn. Understood. Rumi leaned against his shoulder, relief flooding her face. Naruto let himself breathe at last. The penthouse was quieter than usual after Tsunade and her guard detail departed. For a few precious minutes, Naruto thought maybe just maybe he'd have peace. Then the elevator doors opened. Jiraiya's massive frame filled the entry, his red vest brushing the doorframe as he stepped in. His usual smirk wasn't there. His gaze went straight to Naruto's neck, to the faint black patterns barely hidden under his collar. "BRT," Jiraiya said, voice heavy. "We need to talk about that mark. You pushed it too far in the cloud, and I heard it flared again in the gym. Orochimaru doesn't leave things lying around by mistake." Naruto swallowed, the memory of seizing on the floor still too fresh. For once, he didn't shoot back a joke. He just nodded. Before the air could grow heavier, another figure slipped in behind Jiraiya. Selene, sharp and deliberate, a portfolio under her arm. Her expression softened briefly when she spotted Rumi, then hardened again as she turned to the group. "I came because Huntrix can't afford to ignore this anymore," she said. "The Saja boys are meddling with the Han Moon. Their influence is destabilizing things, and Jiaima's claws are all over it. If they break the Han Moon, we're looking at a wave of demons that not even the cloud and leaf combined could hold back." Mira set her mug down HRD on the table. "So it's confirmed then. They're his." Selene nodded. "And the longer they play at being idols, the more leverage they get. Fans, attention, resonance stirred by every song. We need a counter. A public one." Naruto glanced between them, his teacher bearing down about the curse, and Selene laying out the next storm already forming. He sighed and leaned back into the couch. "Guess rest days don't exist for hunters." Rumi slipped her hand into his. "Not for you, at least." Naruto stretched his shoulders as he walked beside Sasuke, savoring the simple freedom of moving on his own again. No crutches, no wince in his step. The tension in his legs was gone, replaced by that restless storm thrumming just beneath his skin. He cracked his knuckles, grinning. "Finally," he said. "No more sitting around like an invalid. I'm ready to actually move." Sasuke gave him a sidelong glance, his expression unreadable. "Just don't collapse on me again. I don't need to drag yours back to the penthouse." Naruto smirked. "Please. You couldn't drag me if you tried." The gym lights hummed overhead as they entered. The space was empty this late, echoing with every step they took across the mats. Naruto shrugged off his hoodie, tossing it onto a bench. Resonance sparked faintly around his arms, wind stirring the air in lazy circles as he rolled his neck. Sasuke unsheathed his blade, its edge catching the fluorescent glare. Black flame rippled along the steel for a heartbeat before dying back down. "We'll see how much you've recovered." Naruto grinned wider. He drew both his blades, one blue crackling with lightning, the other shimmering with razor-thin currents of wind. He fell into storm stance, his body lowering, energy coiling like a spring ready to snap. The air thickened. They clashed. Sasuke moved first, fast and precise. His blade cut down in a diagonal arc, black sparks hissing off its edge. Naruto caught it with the blue blade, lightning screaming as it met the dark fire. The impact rattled the gym walls, mats shifting under their feet. Naruto twisted, bringing his second blade up in a rising strike. Sasuke sidestepped, cloak of fire flaring around him as he barely missed being sliced open. The air crackled as wind and flame whipped against each other, sending sweat and sparks flying. "You're slower than last time," Sasuke taunted, thrusting forward with pinpoint precision. Naruto deflected, grinning through clenched teeth. "Slower? Nah. Just pacing myself. Don't want to embarrass you too fast." A thunderclap echoed as their resonances clashed again, lightning wrapping around flame, wind screaming through black sparks. Every strike, every dodge was sharper, heavier. This wasn't training anymore. This was two predators testing each other, proving who would break first. Finally, Naruto slammed a heel into the mat, wind bursting outward in a sharp shockwave. Sasuke slid back a step, hair whipping in the sudden gale. Both of them were panting now, sweat dripping, but neither lowered their weapon. For a moment, silence stretched. Then Naruto smirked. "You're getting better, Sasuke. Almost makes me wanna try." Sasuke's lips twitched into the faintest smirk of his own. "Then stop talking and prove it." The walls rattled under the weight of their clash, black flame and storm lightning ripping across the gym floor. Neither Naruto nor Sasuke noticed the elevator ding until. "Are you too crazy?" Rumi's voice cracked through the chaos. She stormed in, Mira right behind her, both of them wide-eyed with outrage. "You can't use your resonance in an indoor gym." Naruto froze mid-swing, the lightning around his body flickering uncertainly. Sasuke lowered his blade, scowling, but neither looked particularly guilty. Naruto's grin split wide instead. Finally. Perfect excuse. Before Rumi could scold him further, Naruto blurred forward, resonant sparks still clinging to his frame. He scooped her up in his arms with surprising gentleness and kissed her full on the lips. The shock of it made her squeak, her anger melting as her face flushed scarlet. She clung to his shoulders, her breath catching when he lifted her clean off the ground, sweeping her into the air like she weighed nothing. When he finally set her down, Rumi's braid was a mess, her knees wobbling. She opened her mouth to yell again, but all that came out was a stammered, "Why you idiot." Naruto beamed, utterly unfazed. "Don't worry, love will take it to Celine's training hall. No complaints there, right?" Without waiting for her response, he bolted for the door, calling over his shoulder, "Come on, Sasuke, let's go before she cools off and kills me." Sasuke sheathed his blade with a faint sigh, but the small smirk tugging at his lips betrayed his amusement. He fell into step behind Naruto, muttering just loud enough for Mira to hear, only he could turn a lecture into a love scene. Mira pinched the bridge of her nose, trying not to laugh. "You boys are insane." The morning air buzzed faintly with static, every breath charged like the sky before a storm. Naruto stood loose in his stance, watching as Sasuke's blade sputtered with arcs of lightning. "Listen," Naruto said, tone suddenly sharper. "Lightning release can't be forced. Push it too hard, it'll burn you out. But you can't let it get ahead of you either. Think of it like notches on a bowstring, you hold it back just enough, guide it, then let it snap where you want it to." Sasuke narrowed his eyes, nodding once. He crouched low, resonance flaring again. This time he let it build just under his skin, humming sharp and violent, before he released. In an instant he blurred across the training field, faster than his body was used to. But his balance faltered, the current outran his control. He stumbled, boots dragging furrows in the dirt. Naruto was already there. A crack of thunder, a flash of movement, and he blitzed ahead, catching Sasuke by the collar before he face-planted. The static clung to both of them, their hair lifting in the charged air. "It's gonna be hard," Naruto muttered, steadying him. His grin softened into something almost proud. "But you'll get it." He tapped two fingers against Sasuke's temple. "Use your Sharingan. Not just to see me use it, to keep your mind in step with your speed. Your body's already faster than your brain can process. Catch up." Sasuke's chest heaved, eyes glowing crimson as the tomo spun. He replayed the stumble in perfect clarity, frame by frame, analyzing every twitch, every wasted movement. Naruto stepped back, storm blade finally drawn, lightning crawling up the steel like a living thing. "Now again. This time don't just chase the lightning. Make it chase you." The field buzzed like a drumhead about to break, the first sparks of something monstrous beginning to take shape. The grass of the training field swayed under the static pressure as Naruto tightened his grip on the wooden sword. No storm cloak, no wind, just pure lightning release crackling along his frame, making his movements twitch quick. He lunged first, blade cutting across in a blur. Sasuke met it, wood smacking wood, the impact jolting through his arms. Naruto didn't hold the pressure, he slipped past the lock, lightning dancing down his leg as he pivoted and slashed again, faster. Sasuke's Sharingan tracked the motion, his own body flickering with raw sparks as he pushed his resonance higher. His speed leapt, and this time he slid under Naruto's strike, countering with a sharp jab that nearly caught Naruto's ribs. "Not bad," Naruto muttered, skidding back. Then he surged forward, movements a storm of quick cut slashes that barely left afterimages before the next was already coming. Sasuke blocked high, ducked low, his heart hammering to keep pace. The Sharingan traced every twitch of Naruto's muscles, but his body strained to answer. He gritted his teeth and pushed harder, resonance burning hotter in his veins. Another lunge Sasuke blurred, sidestepping and striking out. Naruto twisted, his lightning release snapping in arcs across his arms as he ducked just under the swing. Their blades kissed, sparks spitting where resonance clashed. Naruto grinned, teeth bared. "That's it. Keep pushing. Don't think, just move." They exploded into motion again, trading slash for slash, lunge for lunge. Every strike was faster than the last, each block more desperate, their silhouettes flickering through the field like streaks of light. Sasuke's speed grew, each burst sharper, and Naruto matched him step for step, lightning hissing louder with every dodge and strike. By now the wooden swords were cracking at the edges, barely holding against the force. Neither slowed. Each movement was a test, a challenge, a dare to see who broke first. Sasuke finally let his sword drop, chest heaving, sweat running down his temple. Sparks still clung to his arms, but the burn in his muscles had reached its peak. He hunched forward, trying to catch his breath. Naruto leaned casually on his wooden sword, grinned sharp despite the faint tremor in his legs. "Yeah, that's what I expected. Lightning taxes your body way faster. It's raw speed, no cushion, no mercy. My body usually does better when I blend it with water or wind gives my limbs support, take some of the strain off." Sasuke glared up through his damp fringe, Sharingan still faintly spinning. Naruto's tone wasn't mocking, though. If anything, it was steady, instructive. "Once you build up endurance," Naruto went on, voice low but certain, "you'll be able to speed blitz most demons before they even blink. That's the trade you suffer now, but later, you'll move like a thunderclap. No one will see you coming." Sasuke exhaled through his nose, both frustrated and fired up. He hated lagging behind, but the promise in Naruto's words had weight. He stood straighter, eyes narrowing, determination burning hotter than the fatigue. Naruto chuckled, giving him a quick clap on the shoulder. "Don't worry, team. You'll get there." By the time the sun reached its peak, the training field shimmered with heat. The air reeked faintly of ozone and scorched earth from their resonance clashes. Both boys moved slower now, their sparring less about landing strikes and more about seeing who would collapse first. Sasuke lunged with one last desperate burst of speed, blade aimed at Naruto's ribs. Naruto twisted just enough, wooden sword sliding down Sasuke's steel in a smooth parry. The clash rang sharp, then broke apart with both of them stumbling back, gasping for air. "That's," Sasuke bent, resting his hands on his knees, "enough." Naruto dropped onto the grass with zero dignity, lying flat and spread-eagled. His chest rose and fell in rapid bursts, sweat soaking his shirt. "Yeah," he wheezed. "Call it half-time." For a moment they just listened to the cicadas buzzing in the distance, the sound of the wind rolling down the mountains. Sasuke finally sat beside him, not lying down, just close enough to share the shade of a passing cloud. Naruto cracked one eye open. "Not bad, huh? You lasted longer this time. TCH. Sasuke wiped his forehead with the back of his wrist. "You're still faster. Give it time. Your body will catch up." Naruto smirked, eyes drifting shut again. "You've got the Sharingan, after all. Built-in cheat code." Sasuke almost smiled at that, though he kept it hidden, letting the silence stretch while his breathing steadied. The two of them sat under the shade of a cracked training post, bento boxes open between them. The cicadas hummed like a living metronome in the summer heat, and the only sound for a while was the quiet rustle of wrappers and the crunch of rice ball. Naruto tilted his head, chewing thoughtfully. Hey, Sasuke, what resonances did Itachi have? The question could have been a blade if it had come from anyone else. But Naruto's voice carried no malice, just quiet curiosity. Sasuke didn't even flinch. He swallowed his bite slowly, his eyes on the distant tree line. Fire, he said at last. Ice. His voice dropped lower. And illusions. Naruto gave a low whistle. Figures. He didn't press, didn't make it heavy. Instead, he nodded like it was a piece of strategy to file away for later. He grinned around another mouthful of rice ball. If he doesn't have lightning, then maybe we check if you've got wind tucked away in there somewhere. Wind against fire and ice. That's an advantage right there. Sasuke looked at him sidelong, lips twitching. What Naruto didn't say, the thing no one ever said, mattered more than all the strategy. He didn't say if you can beat him. He didn't say if you're strong enough. He only spoke like it was already written, like the future held nothing but Sasuke standing over his brother's corpse. For once, Sasuke let that weight settle into his chest, not as pressure, but as something steadier. A promise. Wind, huh? He muttered, a rare spark of interest in his tone. We'll see. The rice ball were long gone by now, the two of them leaning against the cracked post with the cicadas buzzing above. Sasuke's head tilted back, eyes closed, while Naruto poked at the grass with a chopstick. You hear about Gaara? Naruto asked suddenly. Sasuke cracked one eye open. What about him? Naruto smirked. Apparently Zoe's boyfriend is now the Kazekage. Can you believe it? Our boy who used to brood harder than you. Sasuke scoffed, but there was the tiniest quirk of amusement at the corner of his mouth. Kazekage, huh? Figures. He was always strong. Controlled his resonance like it was breathing. Yeah, Naruto said, nodding. Guess he's finally found a reason to fight besides hate. Zoe probably helps with that. Makes him softer. Don't tell him I said that. Sasuke gave him a flat look. You mean you're jealous? Naruto leaned back with a grin. Jealous? Nah. I already got my feisty girl. But it's weird, you know. Us, Gaara people like us weren't supposed to have stuff like this. Family. Futures. And yet here we are. For a moment, the joking tone dropped. Sasuke didn't answer right away, but the silence between them was heavy with unspoken things, losses, promises, and a shared stubborn refusal to stay broken. Then Naruto chuckled, breaking it. Bet Zoe's already bossing him around. Poor guy doesn't know what he signed up for. Sasuke's lips twitched again, almost a smile. She'll keep him in line. Someone has to. The break ended with the clatter of chopsticks in the lunchbox and the low sigh of the breeze. Naruto stretched his arms over his head, joints popping, before grinning. Alright, team, let's see what you've got after that rice ball power-up. Sasuke didn't even dignify the jab with a glare. He stepped back into stance, blade sliding from its sheath with a whisper of steel. His resonance flared first, the familiar roar of fire, flames licking up the length of his sword until it glowed white-hot. Then, with a sharp inhale, lightning crawled up his arms and coiled around his body, weaving into the fire. Sparks danced along the edge of the blade, each lick of flame snapping with static. Naruto's grin faltered into genuine interest. Not bad, combining them like that makes every cut twice as deadly. Sasuke moved. His speed jolted upward, each step a blur, his body carried forward by the crackling current racing under his skin. The fire around his sword whipped into long arcs, and with every slash, the lightning shot outward, making the air pop and hiss. When the blade sank into a training post, it didn't just scorch, it seared deep, sparks crawling down the charred grain as smoke rose in jagged spirals. Now, Sasuke said lowly, pulling the sword free, they burn and they break. Naruto tilted his head, arms folded, the faintest flicker of pride in his eyes. Looks like someone's been paying attention. Keep that up, and even Itachi's illusions won't save him if you land a strike. Sasuke exhaled, the fire dimming around his blade, but the lightning still buzzing faintly along his frame. His chest rose and fell faster than he wanted to admit, but the thrill of it of shaping two resonances into one fluid style was undeniable. Don't stop there, Naruto said, stepping forward with his own wooden blade. Now try to keep that up while fighting me. The training field crackled with tension, the air thick with the scent of ozone and singed earth. Sasuke lunged first, his blade wreathed in flame, lightning coiling around his body like a living current. He cut forward in a blur, the ground scorching under each step. Naruto answered without hesitation, his own twin blades flashing into whirlpool stance. Water surged, lightning lacing it in short bursts, his movements smooth yet relentless, like a fast river cutting through stone. Each slash deflected Sasuke's lunges, every parry redirecting the momentum of fire and lightning back into harmless sparks. But Sasuke wasn't slowing. He pressed harder, faster, Sharingan blazing as he read Naruto's counters, twisting his strikes tighter, sharper. His blade cut arcs of red-hot flame, each lunge quicker than the last. Finally, the speed broke through, Naruto was forced a step back, his stance rippling like water buckling under the current. Sasuke smirked. You can't hold me back with just that. Naruto slid one blade into its sheath, grip tightening on the other. His aura spiked, the calm flow of the river vanished, replaced by the roar of a storm. Storm stance. Lightning shrieked across his arm, screaming down the length of his blade until the edge seemed to stretch longer, sharper, as though the storm itself had been ground into steel. Wind tore through the training field, pulling at their clothes and hair, kicking up dirt in furious spirals. Sasuke's grin widened. Finally. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He didn't waste words. He simply moved. One moment he was crouched, the next he was gone. Thunder cracked as he closed the distance in an instant. Sasuke barely twisted aside, the blade grazing his sleeve, the heat of lightning scorching his skin. His Sharingan tracked the movement, but even with it, Naruto's storm-fueled speed was almost too much. Their blades met, sparks exploding outward. Sasuke forced his fire to flare hotter, lightning bracing his limbs so his muscles didn't tear under the speed. Every strike he answered, Naruto was there with one faster, sharper, heavier with the force of the storm. The clash rang across the field, two predators, one blazing flame and lightning, the other the storm itself. Each exchange pushed the other higher, testing reflexes, endurance, and willpower. And through it all, Sasuke's smirk never left. Naruto only used storm stance when he was serious. And now Sasuke had forced him into it. The storm of their spar only grew more violent. Every time Naruto's storm blade and Sasuke's flame-crackling sword met, thunder followed booms so loud the ground trembled, the training field scorched with scars of lightning and fire. Sasuke pressed harder, his Sharingan spinning, predicting and adjusting to Naruto's movements, his strikes carving flaming arcs that forced Naruto onto the defensive. Sparks lit their faces with every collision, two predators locked in rhythm, refusing to yield. Naruto's eyes narrowed. His grin was gone. He wasn't testing anymore, he was about to end this exchange. He shifted his stance, feet kicking off the ground with a sudden burst of wind. His cloak caught the updraft, and for a breath, he was airborne, hovering, suspended on whirling currents. The world slowed as he angled his blade downward, storm resonance building until it screamed along the steel. From above, Naruto looked like a thunder god descending, lightning bleeding off him in violent bolts, his blade becoming a shard of the storm itself. Sasuke's eyes widened, his Sharingan tracking the blur, but even he struggled to follow the raw speed of Naruto's descent. The air split open with the sound of stone cracking, the pressure suffocating. And then Naruto dropped. A controlled dive, his blade-like judgment, the storm carried in his strike. The ground beneath Sasuke shattered as Naruto's attack came down, the boom shaking the training field like an earthquake. Sasuke caught the edge of the blow, his arms screaming with the strain of blocking. Fire and lightning roared in protest, clashing against Naruto's storm, a fusion of elements crashing together in a violent storm front. Sasuke's boots dug trenches in the earth as he slid back, but he didn't fall. Instead, he looked up at Naruto, panting, sweat dripping from his brow, then smirked. Naruto landed lightly, storm cloak sparking around him. He tilted his head, meeting Sasuke's grin with one of his own. This was no longer just training. This was proof that they were pushing each other into new territory, into power only they could understand. The storm above darkened at Naruto's words. "Summon Kirin," he said with a grin, as if daring Sasuke to prove himself. Sasuke's chest heaved, eyes burning with the Sharingan's glow. He raised his blade to the sky, his voice low and sharp. The storm answered. Clouds split open with a roar, lightning coiling into the shape of a massive dragon, scales alive with fire and electricity. It twisted and writhed, a two-headed beast of thunder and flame, roaring as if it had always been waiting for him. Naruto's own resonance surged in answer. Kurama's form rose around him, not the full beast but the storm kitsune cloak, tails whipping like living lightning. His blade cut the air, and with a deafening crack the fox roared back at the heavens. For one perfect moment, the world was nothing but storm. Then the titans collided. Kirin plunged, both heads crashing down with apocalyptic force. Kurama surged upward, Stormblade raised, meeting the dragon in mid-descent. The sky exploded. The earth buckled. Lightning and flame collided with blue-white fury, the shockwave flattening trees and throwing dust into a swirling cyclone. Both of them were hurled back, bodies hitting the ground with bone-rattling force. The blast left a crater where the two attacks had met, the very air still crackling and shimmering from the resonance. And then, silence broken only by two voices. Naruto rolled onto his side, coughing, his grin wild. Sasuke lay on his back, chest rising and falling like a drumbeat, then broke into laughter, the rare sound echoing across the ruined training field. Naruto laughed with him, the storm still flickering faintly across his skin. "You did it," he said between breaths, pride flashing in his eyes. Sasuke sat up, shoulders shaking with quiet laughter, a smirk curving his lips. For the first time in a long time, his voice carried something lighter than bitterness. "At least for now I'm your equal." Naruto nodded, grin softening into something steady, unshakable. "Yeah. For now." The storm overhead finally broke, rain hissing down over the crater as the two sat there, soaked to the bone but alive, their rivalry and bond sealed deeper than ever. Naruto's grin widened, sweat still dripping down his brow from their last clash. "You want to see something I've been working on?" Sasuke arched an eyebrow, curious despite himself. "Show me." Naruto closed his eyes, drawing in a deep, deliberate breath. The air shifted. A low hum built into a roar as the wind bent around him, circling tighter and tighter until it spiraled upward into a raging tornado. Dust and loose stones whipped into the air, the sheer pull of his resonance dragging the very atmosphere into his command. Now, Naruto shouted through the howl of the storm, his voice steady even as his cloak flickered violently, "Add your flame." Sasuke didn't hesitate. He moved his blade forward, Amaterasu's black fire and his crimson resonance spilling into the tornado. In an instant, the storm ignited. Flames and wind meshed into a monstrous column, the tornado turning into a towering inferno that scorched the very air. And then it shifted. Kurama's outline shimmered into being, not the full form but a phantom rod of red flame and howling wind, its tails thrashing as it roared into the sky. The combined resonance rattled the ground beneath their feet, heat waves colliding with bursts of pressure. Sasuke's eyes widened, not in fear but in sheer awe. This is, he could barely find the word. Combined resonance. Naruto's laugh carried through the storm, raw and boyish despite the destruction surrounding them. "Almost. I can't hold it for long yet." As if to prove him right, the colossal fox sputtered, its body unraveling as the tornado collapsed in on itself. The flames scattered in embers, and the air snapped back to stillness, leaving the training field scorched and littered with debris. Naruto sighed, planting his hands on his knees, chest heaving. See? Still haven't gotten the hang of it. Sasuke was still staring at the smoldering ground, his Sharingan fading as he slowly exhaled. He glanced back at Naruto, something like respect flickering behind his smirk. If you mstr that. Naruto straightened, flashing a tired grin. Then the demons won't stand a chance. Sasuke stood there longer than he meant to, eyes tracking the smoldering streaks left by the tornado's collapse. The air still tasted of scorched ozone, still shimmered faintly with residual heat. He slowly let his Sharingan fade, rubbing at the corner of his eye. Naruto, on the other hand, just straightened up with that lopsided grin of his, like he hadn't almost ripped himself apart seconds ago. Sasuke's voice cut through the silence, lower than before. That was reckless. Naruto blinked, taken aback, then laughed. What, worried about me? Sasuke's smirk didn't reach his eyes. You should be worried about yourself. That wasn't just your resonance in there. If it goes wrong, he let the thought hang, his gaze sharpening on Naruto. It's not just your body that pays for it. Whoever's resonance you're using, whoever you're tied to, they could be caught in the backlash too. For a second, Naruto's grin faltered. He glanced down at his hand, flexing it like he could still feel the burn of the stormfire fox they'd conjured. Yeah, he admitted quietly. I know. Sasuke studied him, the way his shoulders slouched just enough to betray the weight of that knowledge. Naruto wasn't stupid reckless, sure, but never ignorant. He knew the danger. He was just willing to shoulder it anyway. That's why I'm working on it, Naruto said after a beat, his voice steady again, stubborn as ever. If I can mstr it, then maybe it won't have to hurt anyone else. Just me. Sasuke scoffed, though it came out more like a sigh. Idiot. But deep down, beneath the dry tone, was a thread of something else: admiration, maybe even fear. Because Naruto's determination wasn't just dangerous for him. It was dangerous for anyone who tried to stand against him. Naruto caught the look, smirked again, and clapped Sasuke on the shoulder. Hey, you'll be there to keep me in check anyway, right? So don't worry so much. Sasuke's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to push harder. But instead, he just gave a curt nod. Because the truth was, he already knew he'd always be there. The night air was sharp against their skin as Naruto and Sasuke flipped and vaulted across rooftops, trading smirks like two kids daring each other to go faster, higher. But the easy rhythm broke when they spotted Sakura. She wasn't waiting casually, wasn't smiling, her expression was raw panic. She turned on them the second they landed. Gaara has been kidnapped, she said, breath tight, words cutting through the dark. We have to go. There's a chopper waiting. Both boys sobered instantly, nodding without question. Sasuke's Sharingan flickered for half a heartbeat, and Naruto's jaw set firm. Without another word, they followed Sakura down through the lobby and up the stairwell to the roof. The helicopter was already roaring, blades whipping the air into a frenzy. Kakashi stood just outside, his usual slouch gone, posture sharp as steel. His single visible eye creased. Looks like a Team 7 mission, he said, voice deliberately light, but none of them missed the edge beneath it. This wasn't banter. This was war. This'll take us to the airstrip, Kakashi continued, stepping aside so they could climb in. From there, we head for the States. Naruto tightened the strap of his swords and ducked inside. Has anyone told Zoe? He asked, his voice quieter than usual. Kakashi shook his head once. No. It's top secret. He's been kidnapped, and if the intel's right, he only has a day at best. Sakura pressed her lips into a line as she climbed in after him. Sasuke followed, silent but coiled with tension, his fingers brushing the hilt of his blade in a wordless promise. Naruto leaned against the chopper's wall, staring out at the glittering city lights as the door slid shut. Soul faded behind them as the helicopter lifted off into the night, Team 7 united once more, not as friends laughing on the rooftops, but as hunters on a desperate race against time. The night wind whipped across the rooftop, carrying with it the sharp tang of Seoul's neon-lit streets. Orochimaru stood at the edge, pale face gleaming under the city glow, golden eyes fixed on the departing helicopter. With the fox gone away, he whispered, tongue flicking against his teeth, the mice will play. Kisame snorted, hefting Samehada against his shoulder. Isn't it cat? You know, when the cat's away. The words cut off with a wet grunt as Orochimaru's blade slid between his ribs. Kisame glanced down, then grinned wide, teeth sharp as razors. The sword hummed in his grip, feeding energy back into his wound, knitting it closed in seconds. Touchy, huh, he rasped, almost laughing. Orochimaru withdrew the blade, his smile languid, serpentine. He licked the BLD from the steel before tucking it away, then drew a small photograph from his sleeve. Rumi's face stared back at him, caught mid-performance, hair braided, eyes blazing. His grin widened, hungry and reverent all at once. Let's go visit my daughter, he purred. Kisame frowned, unsettled by the softness laced in the word, but he let it go. Orochimaru's obsessions were his own. The shark man hefted his sword and followed as Orochimaru stepped off the ledge, descending into the city's shadows. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 13. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.